Tonight we're going to be working on our Pink Carnation, and this is a fun piece, but we need to make sure that it's not a real big piece. You want to keep it smaller so that you can work with the wax. You can't let it get too big because then you can't control it. And we also want to make sure that the piece is as flat as we can get it. We're going to be working with some of our stipple brushes and a wax tool today, and we're going to start out with our gourd round first, and we're going to heat that up, get that nice and warm. And I started on the outside and working my way to the middle, and the reason we're warming it is because it lets the wax apply nice and smooth. Now I've had my stipple brushes in the wax, warming them up, and I'm going to start by putting black on the outside and just a nice ring. Get the goobers put away there. Now my hands will be all nice and black for the rest of the video. And don't go over it because it starts to pick the wax back up like that. So you want to just leave it once we have put that on. And then I'm going to put in Carnation Pink. And these are all found in the 24 pack. Or we have a kit for you to make it nice and convenient. I'm just going to put that all the way around. And I'm actually going to let that dry just a second. And I'm going to put another layer on that just so we have that thick enough, because we're going to use a little bit of that wax moving all around. Okay, and then the last part on the dandelion, I'm going to come in with my number 2 wax tool, and I'm going to apply that. And the reason I'm going to use my wax tool there is because I want it thicker. Not nice and thin, we want it thicker, because that's going to be the area that's going to get hit the most. And we don't want it just to run away here. If you're not familiar with my process, visit my website at miriamjoy.com. There's a great basic video on how to do the basics of wax design with the wax design tools. Okay, so we have this all down, and I am going to come over here and we're going to heat this up, and I'm going to bring in one of my smaller tools and we'll warm it up as well. I had it sitting in my wax warming, so it's pretty warm and it'll stay pretty warm. But when you're bringing a tool over here, you want to warm it up under your heat gun first, so because you never want to work with a cold tool and warm wax. It just doesn't work well. So we're going to start again on the outside, warm that up just a tad. And we're going to get to that center and see how that center heats so much faster after that. And we're going to pull some of the black, and it's not warm enough when it does that. You need to get it warmer. We're going to pull some of the black areas into the flower. We don't want it coming off that edge, so try not to heat that edge up anymore. I'm going to pull my heat gun up further. And we're just trying to keep that warm without doing that basics. And I am not happy with that at all. So what we're going to do is we're going to do it again. And I want you to know that I have done some of them several times before I get them where I like them. So there's nothing wrong with that. So just wipe it off. We're going to start again. And also, if you want it thicker on the outside, let's put it on with our wax design tool this time, so you can see how different it works. So we're going to put this on And I'm just kind of moving the wax around, and that's going to give it a thicker base. So I need a little bit more thicker black, I think, on the edges. But kind of learning your tools and what you want to do what is kind of nice. I'm still going to use my stipple brush to put on the pink. And make sure when you're working with that you don't go back over while it's drying, because you're just going to push your wax around. So we're going to put our pink on again. And don't go over an area that you put on till it's kind of cooled a bit. And I am going to do 2 layers of the pink again. And I wish I'd got that guy not quite so close to that edge. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put some more black on top of that to try and keep that from coming off the edges, and maybe even make your black a little bit whiter. And we're going to come in with our yellow again. Dandelion, excuse me. Okay. And we're going to warm him up again, and we're going to warm up our little tool. And I'm going to pull my tool, my heat gun, farther out this time too, as well. I'm going to pull it up a little bit again once it starts to melt. So we're going to kind of bring that in. Now make sure that this little guy is nice and warm, our tool. We're going to start bringing that guy in. Great. Now don't move it. Let it set, because you don't want to move the wax. And I'm going to take some micro beads and I'm going to wet my finger and I'm going to put it in to get what I want. I didn't wet it enough. Let's try that again. Don't chew those little suckers in your mouth if you get them in your mouth. And we're going to set it on our yellow. And I'm going to move it out just a couple of parts. And we're going to finish letting that dry. And you can see this has even moved since we quit blowing it, and that's why it's real important to have just a nice flat piece. And like we talked about, even taking the rim around it just a little bit wider, the black rim. So we're going to let this finish cooling off, and then we're going to come back and we're going to put the finish on our piece. I want to show you one other thing before we start our finish. You can hit the sides and blow the color back, and I want to kind of show you how to do that. We're just going to do just our edges on the back, and we're just going to kind of move that up. And probably best to let that cool down a little bit before you go to the next one so it doesn't move back down. And see how we can kind of move that in a little bit? So we're going to kind of do that on our edges, all the way around our piece. And like I said, I would let them dry a little bit longer in between moving them up than I'm doing, but it kind of gives you back the border of your flower again. So we're going to let this dry, and then we are going to come back and put our finish on. Okay, now that we've finished our flower and it is nice and dry and not warm to the touch at all, you're going to come in and we're going to remove all the wax off the sides. Now when you're blowing one like this, especially on the sides, we want to make sure that we get all of the wax off really, really well. Now if the stain stays, that's okay, but we want to make sure, it's very important that we remove the wax, because we're not going to put a finish on the sides so that we can get our suede lacing attached. So that is kind of important, and you don't want that melting on anybody or anything. So we're gonna make sure you could even take your little hand sander, little piece of sandpaper, and sand that too. That would be good. And then once you've done that, we want to come up and we want to hit these edges just a little bit so that we make sure that we have a nice seal with our finish. That is real important. We're going to hit those so that's just in just a little bit so that our finish can get and set on that really well. The black makes a nice mess. Wipe any of this off, and it's easier to wipe it off. For some reason the wax can be real sticky, but it's easier to wipe it off with a piece of material or a paper towel or something like that. It has a tendency to sit to that better. So we're going to put our finish on with our Mod Podge Dimensional Magic, and it's really important. Just because we say Mod Podge, it's not your regular Mod Podge. There are so many Mod Podge items out there now. This is Dimensional Magic, and this is a hard finish. This is made to put like on glass pieces or jewelry or things like that. So it's made a lot harder, so we want to look for that when we're doing it. Now this is made to go on really, really thick. It's not made to go on thin layers. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put a row around the outside, not quite on the edge, because it still runs off our piece. Otherwise we just put it on in one nice thick thing, but it still runs off our gourd piece, so we're not going to do that. And then we get to the center, we're going to apply quite a bit, and we're going to use our brush to move it around, but don't overwork it. And it's better to have too much than not enough. If you can see your brush strokes, then you're doing it too thin. So let's come in, let's put this around the edge. And this guy over here we'll start with, because he'll probably fall off first. And I'm going to use my brush and I'm going to walk it over the edge just a tad so that you see how it comes off here. Get that sealed. You want it sealed so that if your wax gets warm, it has nowhere to go. And keep that nice. And try not to let the drips on the side. If you get them on the side, take them off. Now this is where we talked about putting nice thick part on, and then we're going to come in and we're just going to move it around. We're not going to overwork it. Now you're going to notice that this is going to just settle and sit nice and clean. If you can still see your strokes, you're going too thin and you need to put a lot more on. And we're going to let that dry. Now another thing is, make sure that you do not shake Dimensional Magic. It will get bubbles on it if you do, so we don't want to shake it. Now we're going to apply, I would suggest 3 to 5 coats minimum when you're working with jewelry. And I always tell you to test them in the heat. I have some sitting in my car window right now, but I don't suggest you set it down like that. But make sure that you know that it's going to be fine in the sun. You should always test something when you're working with it. And let them dry really well in between each of the coats. And then on the final coat, you want to let it dry 3 hours before you touch it again, so you get that nice clean coat on top. And then we're going to put our necklace part on. So come on back and we'll get started with that.